Honourable Member for Rustico Emerald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier. Mr. Premier, you bragged to the media, and indeed in the House today, that the government has provided over 10,000 documents to the Auditor General for her e-gaming investigation. So can you please explain why emails from senior government officials were not among those 10,000 documents?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General was indeed provided with emails from many senior public servants and from former political figures. It's my understanding that there were accounts that were deleted, and Mr. Speaker, that is not something that will take place again under this government, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Honourable Member for Rustico Emerald.
So this is another one for the Premier. Mr. Premier, I mean, there were several senior government officials that were identified as key participants in the e-gaming initiative. Yet, when the Auditor General requested information on emails and other records, nothing was provided. Nothing. And you've just admitted that emails were deleted. So why did you allow these officials to withhold records and emails from the Auditor General?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it's not correct to say that nothing was provided. There were, as I understand it, two officials who, following their departure from government, the email accounts were deleted. That would not happen again, Mr. Speaker, but let me assure this House that there were many senior officials who, on request of the Auditor General, did indeed provide emails as she desired. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Honourable Member for Rustico Emerald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Premier, under the Audit Act, it says the Auditor General shall have free access to all, not part, but all files, documents, and records relating to financial matters of every agency of government or Crown-controlled or owned corporation. Mr. Premier, you are the Minister of Justice in our province, and this is your responsibility. So why did you allow the Audit Act to be breached and indeed obstruct the role of the Auditor General in her investigation?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, from the time the Auditor General's inquiry or review started, there was clear direction from the top and throughout the public service to cooperate with the Auditor General, and frankly, we wouldn't expect anything else. And that was done, as I've said, to the tune of providing more than 10,000 documents, hours of interviews, many initiatives to work cooperatively with the Auditor General. So, Mr. Speaker, I would not consider the way it's being characterized to be fair or accurate. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, it was our objective to ensure that the Auditor General have all of the information that would enable her to conduct a complete review and to provide us with the guidance and to provide this House and provide the people of Prince Edward Island with the guidance to ensure that we give the best possible and good government going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Honourable Member for Rustico Emerald.
So, Mr. Speaker, it was clear that the rules were not followed. The Premier has just said that emails were deleted when they shouldn't have been. And the Auditor General is quite clear in her report. Because these emails were illegally deleted, she could not do the job that she wanted to do. Mr. Premier, it seems odd to me and to the members of the public that information from key officials, both present and former, was destroyed. So can you please tell me, how did this happen under your watch?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it did not happen under my watch. The events described by the Honourable Member took place sometime probably prior to 2012. But let me be very precise in this. The word illegal and earlier references along those lines is a very serious allegation to make, and there are ways to deal with that. And indeed, it's my understanding that there has been a reference to the RCMP, and presumably they are looking into that question, but I don't think it's something that should be thrown around lightly on the floor of this House. But let me say on the point of the emails, we do take that seriously, that there should be records, and the records should be kept. Mr. Speaker, I've spent months, if not years, of my own life in the archives when there are paper records and complete records, and I understand the value of having a continuous and a permanent archive of the important work of government, and what that means in terms of the continuity of good government in this province. We stand by that, and we in fact are acting on policies to ensure that those records are identified and will be kept for longevity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Rustico Emerald.
So, Mr. Speaker, I mean, the picture that has just been painted by the Premier is a case of deleted emails. We have accounts that were also deleted. We also have BBN pins, and for those who aren't familiar, those are codes that users can use with their BlackBerry messengers to send messages without having to share their personal phone numbers or email address. Those are none were provided; they were all gone. This is a huge issue, and it's something that bears further investigation. And obviously, we're not going to get complete and full answers today. So this is a question for the Premier. Mr. Premier, are you, as the Premier, willing to come before the Public Accounts Committee to outline to the committee how this information was destroyed or not provided, well, most of it, and some of it we believe, while you were Premier and Minister of Justice?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it's, I think, unusual to be invited in the course of question period to come to public accounts. I fully respect the work of public accounts and the issues that Public Accounts Committee is addressing. But let me be sure that the inquiry, if it's something that I can respond to, I will, and if someone else can respond to it, I'm sure that's the way that the information will be given to the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Okay, now we'll go to the